We start with the January 6th probe and the committee flexing its evidence. We're starting to see more incriminating evidence leak out, seeing just how deep the plan to steal the election of 2020 was. Newly revealed text messages obtained by CNN show Senator Mike Lee and Congressman Chip Roy going right to Mark Meadows in full support of those false claims of fraud being pushed by Trump and the MAGA team. NBC News has not reviewed these text messages. Senator Lee telling Meadows, quote, exhaust every legal and constitutional remedy at your disposal. Congressman Roy saying, quote, we need ammo. We need fraud examples. We need it this weekend. Those attitudes didn't last long. These Republicans grew skeptical and weary of these bogus claims once no evidence could be provided. And there was zero evidence. These newly revealed texts show the lawmakers expressing concern over the plans to overthrow the election by November. Senator Lee writing to Meadows, quote, if you want senators to object, we need a strong evidentiary argument, i.e., you need more people. Trump didn't have that because his claims about election fraud were false. His team continued to press forward with the alternative electors plot. Senator Lee on January 3rd warning Meadows, quote, this will end badly for the president unless we have the Constitution on our side and unless these states submit new slates of Trump electors pursuant to state law. We do not. Even noting, quote, I have grave concerns with the way my friend Ted is going about this effort. Remember, Ted Cruz objected to the electoral count, but Lee voted to certify the results in favor of Biden. So did Congressman Roy, who told Meadows on January 6th, quote, this is an S-word show. We know what he was saying. Fix this now. Senator Lee's spokesperson telling CNN he has been, quote, fully transparent, and Meadows has not responded. This explosive evidence emerging as we learn about the contentious interview Trump loyalist and White House aide Stephen Miller had with the January 6th committee. Two committee insiders describing the 8-hour interview was, quote unquote, heated at times. Miller invoked executive privilege when asked about his discussions with Trump, including a phone call that White House records show he had with the former impeached president the morning of January 6th. And on the speech he wrote for Trump moments before the riot, Miller was pressed on the word we in this part.
We're going to walk down, and I'll be there with you. We're going to walk down. We're going to walk down anyone you want, but I think right here we're going to walk down to the Capitol because you'll never take back our country with weakness.
Sounds a lot like inciting a riot to me. Maybe, I don't know. I'm nuts. Miller denying Trump was trying to incite the crowd to action. On Trump's false claims of ballot fraud and a fake stolen election, Miller said, quote, argued that the election had been stolen, claiming that there were several examples of fraud. Here's Trump's guy still insisting to the committee there was widespread fraud. It's been through the courts. We have a criminal probe on fake electors. We have a congressional probe on the lead up to the January 6th based on this big lie. Yet Trump's sidekick is denying reality on ballot fraud. Talk about this. Joining me now is former acting U.S. Solicitor General Neil Katyal and former Watergate prosecutor Jill Wine-Banks. Thank you. Two of the smartest people I could ask about this. So, Neil, I'm reading through most of this new information from CNN. And I've seen plenty of screenshots from text messages, friends going back and forth, who canceled on dinner, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know that that's always evidence. It could be in an argument. But how much can any of these text messages be used by the Department of Justice? We know that it's bad and it exposes what the Republicans were trying to do. But what can DOJ do with these text messages with the case that they're currently pursuing?
I think they can do a lot. And even before we get to DOJ, I think it just paints a bigger picture about what the January 6th investigation is all about. And I think a lot of us have been wondering, why is it that the Republican Party hasn't cared more about what happened on January 6th? You know, right after it happened, Mitch McConnell and others condemned it and the like. And I think these texts today, Jason, start to point to an answer, which is that the rot wasn't just Donald Trump. It goes to many leaders in their party. I mean, Mike Lee just voted against Ketanji Brown Jackson for the Supreme Court because, get this, he said she wouldn't uphold the Constitution. I mean, my God. You know, these texts show that this guy was, thick into the plotting of this from the start, going so far as to call Sidney Powell a straight shooter and say that the White House should meet with her. And then when Powell seemed insane, even to the self-proclaimed constitutionalist Mike Lee, he then pivoted to the next most insane person, John Eastman, and told the White House to listen to that guy. So, all of this, I think, explains why the politics have been the way they are, which has made this almost a partisan thing when it shouldn't be. And yes, right. I think this evidence can be used in a Justice Department investigation.
So, Jill, I want to go to you on this. So Stephen Miller goes, he talks to the January 6th committee. He's hostile. He's, angry. He does his whole sort of Kavanaugh thing. And I understand it. Stephen Miller has been sort of committed to this movement all along. What could potentially be next for someone like him? I mean, obviously, if he goes in and lies, and we know he's lying if he's continuing Trump's fraud, is he the next likely person to be sort of kicked upstairs to Merrick Garland? Is he going to be able to walk free and continue whatever sort of white nationalist plans that he has? What would be next for someone like Stephen Miller, who is still tried and true committed to the ongoing coup being put forward by Republicans?
Well, of course, because we don't yet know exactly what he said. We're only hearing tidbits of he claimed executive privilege, which we know is not going to fly. There's fraud and crime exception. President Biden has waived any privilege. There is no reason for him to continue claiming that. So there could be an obstruction charge that could be next for him. Whether he would ever cave, I don't know. Based on what we've seen of him, I have a feeling he's a lost cause. And so I would worry about that. I do want to say I completely agree with Neil that we could absolutely use these text messages in any kind of criminal proceeding at the Department of Justice. But I have a slightly different take on one part, which is both of these people who were adamant about supporting the fraud of the election came to realize that it was a fraud. They came to see the facts, and they voted to confirm the electors, the real electors. So I think we have to give them a break and say, well, they didn't vote that way. And so even though they were willing to be involved, they paid attention to what was true and to the fact that there was no fraud, and they voted the way they should have voted. So I'm going to give them a little break on that.
So I want to follow up.
Argue with Neil, but I just had to say that. Sorry.
Well, Jill, I would just say, first of all, remember they did vote against the impeachment, right? So they voted, yes, you're right, on January 6th, but then they did the absolutely wrong thing. And, the text reveal a plot for 2 months in which they were, plotting a coup. And yes, at the end, they did one right call, but I don't think that diminishes their culpability earlier on for their actions.
And Jill, I wanted to follow up on that because that was my question. I saw the same thing. It's like, okay, these guys were all in at the beginning, right? And then they realized this is nonsense. Now, to me, that's guys in Ocean 11 who start, they start with the bank robbery and they're like, wait a minute, these plans are garbage, right? And then at the end, they decide that they're not going to go with Danny Ocean. That's great. That's wonderful. But does that necessarily mean that they're any better? The person who recognizes that a crime is being committed and realizes that's wrong, but still covers for it, aren't they essentially just as guilty as people who remain committed to it?
Well, they certainly don't get a break in terms of past crimes committed because they do one thing right. So whatever they did in the beginning, but in the beginning they were writing saying, send us evidence. They were asking the right question. Send us ammo, send us facts. We can't win this if we don't have that. So I can't blame them for saying that. Asking for the facts is one thing, and then recognizing you're not getting them, and I can't vote to act in accordance with your conspiracy theory when there is no support for it.
But Jill, I think that they went, I was just going to say, I think they went further than just simply saying, oh, tell me the facts and then I'll make a determination. They are saying, we need ammo. We need fraud examples. Right. We need it this weekend. So they're asking for baked facts. They're asking for stuff that fits their preconceived narrative ahead of time. And I think that's really the thing that concerns me is, both before the election, during the election, after the November election, there was this continued plot, and the facts were not real facts. They were kind of, Donald Trump facts, alternative facts. That's what they're looking for.
So Neil, I want to ask you this because I want to say this real quick, Joe, because Neil's bringing up something that I think is key to a lot of the viewing audience. And a lot of, when I talk to people who don't do this for a living, who aren't brilliant, experienced lawyers, they hear this. They see there's text messages now. They see evidence after evidence after evidence that you've got members of the House and Senate who were complicit in this, who are part of the planning and the plotting. But they're also seeing nobody is walking around in an orange jumpsuit. Nobody's been taken out in handcuffs. Why is this taking so long when we have so much, at least circumstantial evidence that suggests that members of Congress may have been complicit in this coup attempt? Why hasn't Merrick Garland called in more members of Congress? Or maybe he has and we just haven't heard about it. Where do you think we are on that, Neil?
We don't know, but my sense is it probably hasn't gotten to that stage in the investigation yet. I hope that I take the Attorney General at his word that he's going to go where the facts lead him. Obviously, this is something that has to be done in the most careful, meticulous of manners, which is, of course, Merrick Garland's modus operandi. So my hope is that it is happening, that it will happen. You're absolutely right, Jason. The facts already are so damning. The Congressional Committee, the January 6th committee, filed a brief in federal court in January that said basically, we believe the evidence shows that Donald Trump committed various felonies, and then laid it out. And then Judge Carter, a very respected judge in California, agreed and said it is more likely than not that Donald Trump committed these various federal felonies.